Hi guys, so today I'm just going to show you how to make a WEBBUST nuke, and that's pretty much like the most common nuke people have on their cannons now. And then at the end I'm going to explain exactly how it works and why it's built the way it is and like why you need repeaters and stuff, but it's easier to build, but it's a little harder to understand than an efficient nuke. But I'm going to do it first, and then efficient nuke is next. So first I'm going to make basically a nuke compartment, which is just like all the other compartments. It's one up, like the hammer, 4 wide, and it goes into the sand comp. So it goes into here, and it's one up, so it can be one above the booster. And you need to stop it with a ladder here. So basically it's going to end up right here, the nuke side of the WEBBUST nuke. And this one side of it, half of it has to go with the first power with this booster, basically with all the sand stuff, and then the other half has to go with the second power with the hammer. So what I'm going to do is you have the two sections with 3 blocks between them, and then you basically have something like this. So you'll have half the TNT going with the hammer and then the other half going with the nuke, and that just means they'll stack like 1 block apart. So I'll just add the boosters, the same as everything else. This distance here is kind of long for 5. It probably could do it, but you could either like make it 4 and do 3 things of 4. I just wouldn't recommend like doing one of 2, but what I'm gonna do instead is just not add any more game ticks of booster. I'm just gonna double up this one so it just has twice as much TNT, and then it can move the stuff farther basically. So I wired the boosters, and I'm just gonna wire them to this, like the main part, just like that. So it's just going around. And then to power these lower ones, there's a bunch of different things you can do. You can just update them with pistons. So when this goes off, it'll fire the pistons, and those will update these, and then it'll bud power the ones below it diagonally. So you can do that, or like have a block and it'll get the last one, and like you can have it out. But that's kind of annoying because you have to print pistons. So another thing you can do is just have like glass or glowstone or a slab like this, and then the redstone comes in and powers like this, all the ones next to each other. You just can't have redstone at the end one because that is where the TNT goes, so you can't have air there. And also like the newest way to do it, which I'm actually just going to switch it to right now, is just to have like the booster doubled like this, and then you put slabs like that, and they just spawn below the slabs basically. So, and then of course you need this thing so they don't fly out. And honestly, I'm just gonna block this in. Like you'll probably be able to find a better way with less blocks, but I just don't want this thing exploding here interfering with anything that's going on over here. And then for the actual WEBBUST nuke, I can start on this block right here and stack it like 14. That was actually perfect. And then stack. That's actually kind of a lot. So now I'm basically just going to wire 1/2 of it. So select 1/2, and you need to do the same kind of wiring, but you need it to be on a comparator. I'm going to put it on a comparator first, and then I'll explain other things, but you need it like that on a comparator. And so now they're all comparator wired, and then you can do this and then stand in the middle, copy, flip, paste. Or you can select both and just do /wire, but that like messes up sometimes. So now it's wired, and we just need to find a time to power it. So all of them are going at the same, all these dispensers are going at the same game tick. I'm thinking of wiring it from here, which means I'm gonna move the wiring over one, so it like fits at a spot where it's just 1 up instead of 2, basically. So now like it's lined up with the lower one, and I can literally just power it from here, and this is safe because there's the TNT is going here, so it's fine. And you can go repeater into here. It doesn't need a comparator after you have one at the end. So now I'm just gonna power it through here, which this goes through that block. So basically the timing of the nuke, it just needs to be kind of late. I'm gonna just wire it off here and guess the ticks at first, and I'm gonna just, so basically like the reason why it needs to be late is because you need to wait till all the sand that you're stacking turns into an entity first. So when after all the sand starts falling, then you can dispense the nuke. And the reason why is that you need the nuke to stack at the top of your sand stack, because it starts at the top and it nukes down. So to get it to stack at the top, what I said in the last video about order of entities, where you can get different sand to stack at different heights based on when it spawns in, that applies to TNT as well. So the TNT will stack in based on when it was spawned in. So if it spawns in after all the sand, it'll stack after all the sand. So it'll stack at the very top, because the sand stacks from bottom to top. So the TNT will end up last. So we're just gonna have to keep delaying the nuke until it starts, or it stops being in the middle. So what you want to do is just guess ticks first, and like I'm just gonna make it probably too early first, and then you don't even need to like time it. It's not a specific number, like don't copy the number from mine. It's gonna be different for every cannon. So like you see that one, it's stacked these in the middle, and the reason it'll always stack half of them at the top, because those go with the red sand. So the red sand's always above the normal sand. That's this half, but you want this half to be also at the top, just one block below the red sand. So I'm just gonna add, well, one more tick and see what happens. And you always want to get rid of any sand there, so it's all the way from Y1, so that way it doesn't stack at the top. And there we go. So now it kind of worked, right? So that does mean that they're together next to each other, so it's the right timing. And it didn't nuke very much because, well, I'll show you again. Basically, we need to change the rendering of our web bus. We need to kind of power it differently. We need a repeater. So what happens, you can see like it's really, like it's wasting a lot of the TNT, exploding very densely. And it should go roughly about 1 block down per TNT. So it should be going 75 down, but it's only going like 40. So to fix that and make it nuke like what it should, basically you need to put repeaters on one side. So it needs to be on the hammer side, and I'll explain why right after. But you need to basically put you need to replace like 2 or 3 of these, or 1 maybe, with a repeater. And this is just talking about the hammer side, not on this side. This is the nuke side that goes with the sand, just the hammer side. And you want to put them, the greatest chance of it working, you need it to be far away from where you powered it. So I'm putting it on the other side. This powers first, basically, and then this is all the way far away from it. So I powered that last, and then if you basically just fire, you'll see that, as you can see, like the thing is gone, like all the dense TNT is gone, and now it's nuking to 182, which is like 71 blocks. So that's basically what I said. So you might run into some problems making it. Basically, you might end up like having to keep adding ticks, but it never gets any higher. Like you keep adding ticks and it just ends up getting to like this high, and it never goes all the way up to the right height. And the reason why is because like basically your sand order of entities is messed up. You need all your sand to be dropping after the hammer. So you need to make sure this, when the pistons open and drop the first row of sand, that needs to be after the hammer. And so it is on this one. But if that happened to you, go back on ticks on the nuke, and then just delay the sand by 1. And then you just want to find, generally for most cannons, you just want to find the earliest the nuke can be. I'll just show you levering it. And basically you'll see that it nukes every shot, and we'll see if it like blows up or anything. So it looks like it's fine, and basically it's like doing that every shot. Okay, so yeah, basically, yeah, I have the obsidian durability on 2 on here. On most servers it's 3, but it's just like it looks better for crystals. Crystals obsidian breaker is kind of like less sensitive than wines. So you can see that it's basically like 5 wide mostly, except it leaves this. I'd really want to get rid of this first of all. So the reason why that extra thing is there is because the repeaters are making it so there's a difference between like these first TNT and then when the first nuke TNT goes off. So like these are the repeater ones. So you just want more nuke TNTs to be close in timing basically. So you just want to get rid of one of the you don't want to have too many repeaters. So we'll see if it's okay to have just one. And if it is, then it'll nuke the same distance but get rid of this on the next one, or else it won't nuke that far. So in this case it did work, so I guess you only need one. It pretty much nuked the same, and then it got rid of that thing. And like you might want to actually, you don't necessarily have, this is doing 2, I'll just make it 3 and see. You just need to play around with the rendering, like how many are on a repeater and how many aren't basically. Okay, so that does do it like the same height, but then it leaves these. And then another way you can modify the nuke on these is basically you can change how dense you want the nuke, like how close the explosions are, and that'll help it nuke better for certain durabilities. So you could, if you add TNT to the nuke side, so before they are equal amount of TNT almost, but if you make the nuke side have more TNT, what'll happen is it'll go the same distance down, but there'll be more TNTs, so the explosions will be closer. So it'll basically nuke a bit denser and better for high obsidian durabilities. But like you don't want to go crazy. Like you only want to have slightly more, like maybe up to like 30% more than this side. And alternatively, you can, oh, by the way, you can also add them down here. If you get the wire down, you can add them in the floor. Like if you get the wire to go under this block. And then if you have more on the hammer side, it'll nuke farther, but it'll basically spread them out, so it might not nuke as well. It might leave some blocks, but it'll go farther. So also another thing, you can't just add more nuke TNT here. Like you can't just have more that's the same time, because like for the WEBBUST to work, they need to be on off the same wire. So these are using the same wire. They're right next to each other basically. If you have something that's like going off somewhere else and it's like coming to here and wiring and trying to add more TNT that way, it won't really add to the WEBBUST. It might screw up the existing WEBBUST as well, because it's basically not like, it's not rendering together. And that kind of brings me to how it works. And I'm also going to show like improvements, but it's better to understand how it works first. So you basically need to understand first priorities. So things can be powered, multiple TNT can be powered in the same game tick. All of this is powered at the same time, but they don't all dispense at the same time, and they're also not all calculated at the wall at the same time. Minecraft only does one thing at a time. It's like a single core thing, so it only calculates one TNT's thing at a time, so it needs to make some kind of order. So luckily the order that the game chooses to put all the entities in for calculating, it's not random or arbitrary. Basically the order has to do with how they're wired. So like things that are wired on a repeater are all calculated first. So the game goes through and checks all the repeaters that need to be powering in that game tick and all the things that they're powering. So it'll just power these 4 TNT on this repeater first. And then after all the repeaters of that game tick are done, it'll go to the comparators. After that, anything powered on a torch will be powered because the torches are looked at next by the game. And then the last one is just pistons and sticky pistons. So like, you know, this is 1 tick, a comparator is 1 tick, and this is 1 tick, and also a redstone torch is 1 tick. They're all 1 redstone tick, right? So they're all the same, and if you power all these at the same time, like yes, the TNT is technically all on the same game tick, but really like these are added to the list of entities that need to be calculated first, and then this, and then this. There's some more stuff about priority. Redstone wiring itself adds like a slight amount of delay. It's not really delay, but that's a good way to think about it. Basically, if you had like something like this and you had, you know, some redstone in between them, if you power, if you power this redstone at the same time, you might think they both go off at the same time, but technically this one will go off first, because what happens is the game is just gonna say like, okay, this redstone needs to be powered, and then check for a neighboring redstone. So then like these three will be powered, and then check again for neighboring redstone. And you can see that these get powered, and then next this will get powered, but this still has to go one more block. So it's literally just depending on how stuff's wired and like the distance to them is when they'll go. So this literally will go earlier in the game tick than this thing. So if this is the wall, you have two sets of, these are the two halves of the web bust. This is the top half that went with the second power, the hammer side, and then the lower one is the nuke half. So these are all like, all 75 TNT in each one. It's not really the case that WEBBUST is tunneling. It's not like an efficient nuke or a regular nuke where it tunnels down the sand. Really, actually, the explosions are exploding midair. And actually, the reason why WEBBUSTs were invented is because people had cobweb defenses. And if it was tunneling, it would just like shoot all the TNT all the way to the bottom, and then they just explode these three. But what WEBBUST does is it actually, in the air, which it'll treat as like air if it's going fast enough, it'll spread out the explosions. So the way it spreads out the explosions is you just alternate the priorities of these TNT. So you have one single TNT going off in here, and then one single one going off on the other side, and then one single one like that. So basically, like, really, if you think about the priority, it dispenses one on here, then one on here, and then one on here, and one on here. So they add to the list. They're calculated in that order. So the first one that's calculated is like the ones from here, and then a single one from here, and then back and forth. It might not be perfect one-to-one because of just wiring, but it should be pretty close. So really, the nuke TNTs all stay here, and it's just the explosions that are getting rendered at different spots, because basically what happens is one TNT explodes, and then it's like, okay, it's time to calculate one of the nuke TNT, and it checks for any velocities it might have gained, and the velocity it's gained is just the one from that one TNT. So it would think like, okay, so the explosion should be like down here, because it's looking one game tick ahead. The explosion should be down here. So it basically is like, okay, put one explosion here, and then check what's next in the order, and the next thing in the order, it's going back to the next hammer TNT, because they're alternating. So it's like the next thing, okay, we have another hammer TNT, and now explode that, okay, and then explode the next nuke TNT, and it's like, how much velocity does this one have? Well, it was here, and it's like, well, two TNTs have exploded before me, next to me, so I must have like a little more velocity than this one. So put the explosion like down here a little farther, because it had more velocity. And then like, the third one, do this one, and now it's like, okay, 3 TNT have exploded, and put the next explosion here. So it basically just spreads out all the explosions. It's just taking advantage of the order that Minecraft calculates things in, because like if it calculates something first, it can use it later. But if it hasn't calculated that thing yet, like the later TNTs, it can't use it in the previous TNTs. The reason then I had a repeater to put these on an earlier priority is basically like you need these to start with a little down velocity. So you need to have like 4 extra TNT in the hammer side, which goes first before any nuke TNT. So really it's like 4 hammer first, or like 6 or whatever, a few hammers first, and then the first nuke TNT, and then the hammer, and then the nuke. So then like they're added to the list like kind of in this order. So you want to just have like a few here, so it starts going down. So that way it'll just start going down first, and that way like otherwise, because if they're exactly the same, it won't really know which way to go. It might go up based on which side the game decides to go to first. So you don't want it to go up. You want it to just have enough velocity like that the first explosion doesn't like mess with these. So you want to give, and that's why like when I had more stuff on repeaters, it would have more TNT going first, and that means like there would be more TNT first, and then the first explosion would be like, oh, already 6 TNT have exploded, I need to go all the way down here, and then it would like leave that gap because it was like not being next to each other. But if you get rid of these TNT, it doesn't start with that much velocity, just enough that it doesn't screw up the web bust. Okay, so that basically explains how WEBBUST works. So you might have seen people making WEBBUSTs with just pure redstone, no comparators basically, just like these. And it's easier to print. And it's literally just the same. There's nothing special about it. It's the same ordering of rendering with the alternating rendering. It's the same as comparators, because it's just like powering the redstone from the middle, and it'll power both of these like, you know, very close to each other. It doesn't matter if you have this or what, but it's just because of this, it's just a little harder to control to add these few that go first. And what you can do is you could have like, this is the hammer side and this is like the nuke side, and you could have like, this is just the beginning of the wiring. You could basically have it not go to the nuke first. So like, remember, you just need a few TNT earlier in priority before any of the nukes, just a few, and then you can start doing alternating. So what this does is, like I said about how redstone works, it goes here and it does the neighbors, which will do these first, and then finally, after it definitely does these first, it goes to the first nuke TNT. So you want to be like explicit. It needs to know to do this first. Otherwise, the server will make a guess, or it'll calculate. It doesn't guess, but it'll use some stupid thing. And you don't want, you want to have control over which one goes first. You don't want it to be up to the server, because that's what makes cannons not work on different servers, because people didn't pay attention how things are wired. So that's pretty much it for the WEBBUST video. In the next one, I'm going to show you how to make efficient nukes, which I'm also going to show you how to do a full nuke with the WEBBUST, like how to add game ticks of nuke after the WEBBUST. If you want to make the WEBBUST part bigger, like the 5 wide part bigger, you have to just add more TNT on this section. You can't add it anywhere else. It has to be off this wire. But if you want more game ticks after, you can add them later. So I'll show you how to do that. But other than that, that's how to make a WEBBUST and how it works. And I'll see you in the next one.